Fam. Guys, we need to talk about something today. Something that is very important. Totes important. All right, I'm never doing that again. But it is about a photograph that was so triggering, so controversial, that it changed the future of art censorship in America. All right, so quick disclaimer before we get into this video. If you are easily triggered, or if you are YouTube and you're thinking about demonetizing this video, know this is an art history piece, so I'm within my rights here. All right, let's get into this. All right, so you know what? I just want to address the elephant in the room, and it is the photo. Here, I'm just going to show you the photo. Let's get it out of the way. There's the photo. You're looking at it right now. It is, you might be thinking, a very nice photo of Jesus on the cross. Now, I'm purposely not giving you context right here because I need to tell you about Andres Serrano, and that is the photographer behind this piece. Andres Serrano is an American photographer and artist who has become famous through his photos of corpses and his use of feces and bodily fluids in his work. Notably, his controversial work, Piss Christ, a red-tinged photograph of a crucifix submerged in a glass container of what was supposed to be, or which is, the artist's own urine. So let's go back to that photo. The name of this photo is called Piss Christ. It is a photo of a figurine of Jesus submerged in Serrano's own piss. Sorry if that pisses you off, but lol. Sorry if that upsets you, but that's just what it is. He used his own special voice to portray his artwork this way. Now, that photo was part of a larger exhibition called Immersions, which is some of his earliest work, and it shows different religious figures, statues, all in figurine form, submerged in piss, sometimes piss mixed with blood. Yeah, I know, kind of weird, but hey, you know, artists are artists, and you're allowed to do whatever you want until the government steps in. Here, let me get off the screen real quick. So this photo was a part of his traveling exhibition that eventually ended up in the VMFA, which is pretty close to me here in Washington, D.C., which is the Virginia Modern Fine Arts Museum. I think I said that right. Basically, where it had toured a couple places and then it went to the VMFA and it upset someone. So someone there wrote to the local paper and the local paper published that person's letter to the newspaper. And that is what triggered what would be known as the beginning of the culture wars. Now, the letter and the publishing and the attention, it's very important because Andres Serrano at this point in time was selected to be one of the 10 artists who would receive a $15,000 prize, which were funded by the National Endowment for the Arts, a taxpayer-funded federal endowment. Basically, your tax dollars were going towards funding his Piss Christ photos. I know, right? But, you know, artists are free to express how they want until it's government money. So this ended up upsetting the people who provided this grant when they found out about this, because you gotta remember that America is based on Christianity, Catholicism, the belief in the Bible. So when you're desecrating such a sacred image, a sacred relic, you know, Jesus on the cross, you're gonna upset some very traditional folks, especially people with an older mindset high in the government. It made Senators Jesse Helms pick up the gauntlet and try to defund the NEA, essentially take away the money for the 10 artists chosen every year to be given $15,000.
Now, I don't know Mr. Andres Serrano, and I hope I never meet him, because he's not an artist, he's a jerk. That's all right for him to be a jerk, but let him be a jerk on his own time and with his own resources. Don't dishonor our Lord. I resent it, and I think the vast majority of the American people do, and I also resent the National Endowment for the Arts spending the taxpayers' money to honor this guy.
Andres Serrano, fun fact, a photo from his bodily fluid series called Semen and Blood 3, where he took semen and blood, as you can see here, and froze it. He froze semen and blood together, took a photo of it, and it was then used for Metallica's album cover, Loaded. Pretty ironic, I'd say. Now, me telling you about Andres Serrano, and perhaps one of the most controversial photos of all time, was the catalyst, the beginning, the early explosion of what started the culture wars in 1989, which was the argument of whether or not government should tell us what we can and cannot do, or can and cannot show as artists, especially as artists in galleries, let alone artists in galleries that are funded by the government. Now we have to talk about the culture wars, which is very important. A good way to think about it is that Serrano was the initial flame lighting the conversation of what kind of art is appropriate, but then Robert Mapplethorpe was the ignite, the ignition, the gasoline on the fire, and shit just hit the fan. The woods are on fire. So let's talk about Robert Mapplethorpe. Robert Mapplethorpe was an American photographer known for his black and white portraits and for documenting New York's S&M scene. He was concerned with classical aspects of beauty, whether in nudes, floral still lifes, or self-portraits, yada, yada, yada. Essentially, he was very involved in the gay scene. He took a lot of taboo, photos that would make straight dudes, especially old straight dudes, feel very uncomfortable. Like dudes in bondage and dudes in leather and, really like leather daddy stuff. I'm sure you can imagine. Remember, this is YouTube. I can't show photos like that. I'm already pushing the limits here. And so what happened with Mapplethorpe was, the thing that happened was Robert Mapplethorpe, a few months before his exhibition, The Perfect Moment, he had died of AIDS complications. In the 1980s and the early 1990s, AIDS in New York was crazy. It was rampant. They had a very flourishing gay scene, and AIDS was just crazy. I'm sure you've heard of it or heard of that point in time. So he died right before his exhibition. So, of course, as you guys know, when someone dies, a lot of hype and also a lot of interest is generated in their work. And this exhibition, called The Perfect Moment, was a collection of his 20 years as a photographer, a collection of all of his best photos and his best work. Now, amongst this collection were some photos that triggered a lot of people and really pissed off some people. So basically, as the Perfect Moment exhibition had toured, it had went to Ohio, it had went to a few different places, and the third stop was the Corcoran, which is funny because that's here in Washington, D.C. And the Corcoran is a very big and a very prestigious art school here in D.C. And the hype had generated so much by this point in time that the Corcoran got news that if they didn't block this exhibition, that they would lose funding from the NEA, like I mentioned earlier, the government entity that gives money to artists in art-funded places. So the Corcoran, being funded by the government stepped in and said, you cannot show this exhibition or we will take away your money. Now, Corcoran, being the obedient little organization they were at this point in time, decided to pull out of the exhibition and let it go on to the next place. Now, as soon as this happened, of course, now the hype is real. It's like 6ix9ine getting out of jail now. It's like the hype is real, and now everyone wants to see it. And so this photo that you're seeing up here essentially was where it ended up in Cincinnati, which was after the Corcoran in Cincinnati, and it was like national news. It was a big deal at this time, especially for the art world, because this was the conversation. It was the culture wars. Just want to show you some photos here. It says, police attend Mapplethorpe show on opening day. That's wild. Here's some people protesting. Of course, they're holding the Bible. I'm sure they're still pissed off about Serrano's Piss Christ. And then right here is Mapplethorpe himself in 1987, only like 2 years before he died of AIDS. And so now the stage is set, right? Everyone's waiting outside the Tekashi 6ix9ine concert, aka the Cincinnati Museum at this point in time, right? You have the protesters who hate the exhibition. They're protesting. I'm sure they're all religious. Then you have the protesters protesting against them and saying that you cannot tell us what to not look at and what art is appropriate. Then you have the police inside, and it is crazy right now. And let me read this to you real quick. A little before noon on opening day, a grand jury issued 4 criminal indictments, 2 against the museum and 2 against Barry, the guy who is running the CAC at this point, himself, for pandering, obscenity, and illegal use of a minor in nudity-oriented materials. 7 of Mapplethorpe's photos were deemed obscene, 2 portraits of children, and 5 of explicit male sexual behavior. So basically, they're saying that there's 7 photos that are the reason for this obscenity, the government stepping in. At about 2:30, some 20 law enforcement officials entered the museum and presented the CAC officials with indictments. They kicked out the visitors, aka no one is going to the concert. No one's going to go see these crazy 7 photos, while they videotaped the exhibition to collect evidence. Fortunately, none of the pieces were injured or none of them were destroyed by protesters. And so now is basically where a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo begins. But we need to shout out the OG, the Batman, the Superman who came down and saved everything, Louis Sirkin, and he's the guy who defended Barry and everyone at the museum and essentially defended our rights as artists to show whatever we want in museums. Sirkin had said this. He said he wanted to show that this was a really critical time in American history. You don't have to like it. You don't have to come to the museum. And Sirkin was right. This was a very pivotal point in history. At the end of the day, after a bunch of deliberating, the verdict came back not guilty for Barry for showing for these photos, which was also not guilty for every artist from then and thereafter, that they would be able to show whatever they want for museums and history from then on out. What? Who's there? Oh, hey. Sorry, I was just so inspired by that piece that I just decided to work on Poop Christ. So, I'm working on that right now. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this video up until this point. You're a real one, you're a trooper, you're a warrior, and I appreciate you. Please use this knowledge and pass it on to your friends. It's a great little fact in history. But that being said, please like and subscribe. It would really mean a lot. I'm trying to make content creation my full-time gig and hopefully hit 100,000 by the end of the year. I know that sounds ridiculous, but hey, gotta dream big sometimes. But also, I do have a Patreon, and if I had Patreon subs, they'd be like scrolling on the screen right here because they donated to me. But I don't have those yet because I just dropped it. So if you want to support the boy, link in bio, and that's where you can do that. All right, get out of here, guys. I gotta push this one out. Oh, God dang it. Oh, shit.